Okay, checking audio levels. I think we're good. Some technical difficulties this morning. That's what caused a delay here, and but allowed me to get a little bit better organized. I just had problems with this recording system where it since I started stuff off, I had to where I wasn't able to access control panel items and things like that. I'm gonna get seated back. Let's get off the overhead here, uh, off the internal web camera. Okay, good morning, Jesse. And I want to get set up for some links too. I do have the system in the background giving the showing the web pages I'm going to bring up as well. And I'm going to start with, okay. So the nature of this, let me get back on camera here. And okay, I'm going to drop a link, drop the first link. And hi there, Hugh. A little bit later in the day in Scotland right now. Okay, let me put these off to the side for their time. I cleared out a little bit of space around the bench so I could go through and cover things too. And so what I'm doing is I'm getting ready for Vintage Computer Federation Southwest. That's in Dallas, and that's going to be next weekend, starting on Friday and going through Saturday and Sunday. And of course, this is the shirt from last year, and all the sponsors. So looking forward to getting a shirt that looks as good as this year as well. They've been doing some previews of the shirts that they've been showing. But one of the things I thought of taking over, I'm not going to be really doing, I plan to take over a few items to go through and sell, but I don't know how much I'm going to cover in that aspect. The I'm taking over uh, Roger from Edgar Digital in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and he's going to have some items there for sale. And he's got a way of handling credit cards and things like that, payment. And I thought, well, if I bring just some other items, because I'm sure he's going to have a van load of items. We're gonna cram my van full just like it was coming off of computer reset with a with as much as you could eat, as many systems as you could load in the back of a vehicle um, for the computer reset times that were a few years ago. And unfortunately, those times are a little bit behind us. Although Roger in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and this is Edgar Digital, I can pop up a link for them as well in the chat window. And he's going to be there. I'm telling you, this guy is the next computer reset. And if you get a chance to go to VCF Southwest, drop by the booth that we have. I don't know the table numbers or anything else that he has. I should have prompted for him for that information a little bit sooner. Let me grab a link to his page. Okay. Why does it tell me the sight's down? Okay, there we go. Let's go to home. Okay. So a link to his site. You can get all his hours and everything else, his address, his location to give him a call for set scheduling. And I realized that, he's about 10 hours west of the Dallas area. But yeah, he's got a neat store. The aisles are getting starting to fill up again. So he's I just say that he needs to sell some of the items there. He's got lots of goodies inside. But I'm gonna go through and one of the things I did plan to take to VCF Southwest was the some of the thin clients I have. And I've got some that I'm going to give to June of Nibbles and Bites. She's going through to where she's got an AS400 just like mine, the 9406-170, and using a PS2 Model 50 with an emulation adapter in it, and that just being running a finicky piece of gear, especially like the PS2 Model 50, where it just has that drive in there, that MFM drive, or on the 50Z, the DBA ESDI drives. Those things are 20 and 30 megabytes. The biggest model you could get that came stock on the PS2 Model 50Z was a 60 megabyte unit, but those things are just still in their age. It's a very finicky system to depend on for operation, in going through and expecting to get on the AS400 to actually proceed and go through and have enough issues that can come up with the AS400 that you've got to work through, much less having the system you're using for accessing it giving you trouble or anything like that. These thin clients, I picked them up locally. We have a Habitat for Humanity location here, and the pricing is actually fairly good. And for the small town sort of vibe that we have here, I don't know how these things got local or who was going through and using them at some point in time. But there's a bundle of them and all the stuff. And even some of them to where they were bundled up. This, I mean, even has a zip tie around the cable. So, they've got a few scuffs on them. I've got some that the lettering's faded away. And of course, this is the old mouse ball sort of thing. I mean, for all that, it's got a little bit of dirt on the tracks. You can see the bands that this one was used and put away. There's there's stuff that it picked up from the pad. Worn in some cases to where it's got these Teflon pads, and it also had them down here. Those are gone. So this is not necessarily new, even though it's with that zip tie band. But encountering the bundle that I have, and I went through and started to use them, got them for just absolute pennies on the dollar. And I've got, of course, other examples for the mouse, so I don't have to cut the wire tie and everything else on this mouse. I've got other ones here, but they had the keyboards, even had a VGA display cables, the generic, and we'll go through and we'll actually get some of these up on screen. I've gone through these on my channel before, but I mean, still has the folds in it. These are probably even less used as it was. But here's the keyboard. Nothing special for the keyboard, pretty cheap. But I mean, in good, decent shape. The lettering and everything else. This is a lot newer condition, and the keyboard's the same way. I have they have some that are with the zip tie cables and packed away, but this probably even has a conventional. I'm trying to even see who went through and made this, but you know, good standard keyboard for all that, and still some good functionality. The keys, there's no. I haven't used these, so there's no keyboard dandruff, crumbs falling out, or anything else when I tilt them. Now, Wyse, which is the main units I got. Now, I actually have a separate batch of the HP thin clients that I'll get to as well. Wyse is actually owned by Dell for probably even close to a decade and a half. It's been a while, and Dell has rebranded them, and they do have some of the Dell thin clients, some modernized, that are under their brand. But you have indicators like that, the Wyse, and it's got the marking of WinTerm and Windows, Microsoft Windows powered. We'll get to the interface in this in a moment, what gets kind of laughed at with these things. This is a 3125 SE, and I put the link already in chat for these. The 3125 has the amber. Remember, this is not orange. This is amber in the context of the color scheme that I'm used to working with. You know, you had a screen, monochrome screen. It was not a yellow screen. It was an amber screen. But they've got a little foot on there. There's the bottom of it. So truly WT3125SE, part number, serial number, manufactured in September of 2004. So we're getting up to the point, you know, it's got the MAC address. So we're getting up to the point that this is a 20-year-old unit. I'd have to go through and look at if I have any of the earlier time frame. Now, a good site, and this is in reference to a lot of the context of people getting these units and wanting to install a better operating system, something they can work with, like Linux. The website I linked is Parky Towers, and it's a site in the UK. I don't know how much it's really necessarily updated these days, but you can go through and you can get a view of these things outside, which we see here. I mean, I should have brought some of the units to go through and that I have opened up to get a look at the internals of them. But certainly if you go to that link, you can go through and and get information. There's even a little bit of speculation on the page on how the units were derived. And for this initial 3125 SE level, it lists the specs. It's got an NSGO GX1 core, 266 megahertz, with 32 megabytes of flash, 64 megabytes of RAM. The chip resolution, we'll get into this angle that a lot of these thin client aspects, these are for, and a thin client, as we'll see in the interface, was a way to go through and have a system, a small system, compact, even in this case, passive, with not even a fan on the unit for cooling or anything else. Passive cooling, that you could have a lot of these set up, a lot of operators set up, and connected to a host unit. That was where all the processing power took place. A true server environment. These thin clients, a client system connecting onto a big server to do their work. And I initially went through on these, pulling out the 325 again, that these have, they have a VGA port, PS2 mouse ports, parallel port, and serial ports, as well as a network, an Ethernet network connection. These are 10/100 megabit per second. These devices are not real picky as far as the Ethernet network that they're connected to. You can connect them into these gigabit Ethernet lines, as we'll do. And unlike the AS400 sorts of, the Ethernet board on the AS400, even for the vintage that we deal with a lot of the time, that I deal with on my 9406-170, there's older systems that they only have a 10 megabit adapter within that AS400 for Ethernet. Sometimes they have token ring too. But they're real picky on the Ethernet interface. And these clients are not. They don't care if it's gigabit, they don't care if it's 10 megabit, 100 megabit, whatever, however you have them connected in. I initially got them for the nature of the serial ports. I thought that this is a good place to have one of these stations close into my network equipment and able to have a console cable to connect in to the equipment, and just a way to go through to power these things up. They had just the basics of going in and connecting up to that network equipment that I have to allow me to quickly review or to change whatever I needed to do, run whatever diagnostic I would have to do. And the other nice thing about these is these are powered by 12 volt DC. These Wyse units, typically it's expressed as a 12 volt DC at 1 amp. Certainly you can easily find 12 volt adapters, and even 1-2 amp. Even they have higher amperage devices, but I've never seen one of these draw anything over needing anything more than an amp or two of current for the 12 volt DC. So they're able to easily be powered up. Now these did have the power supplies with them. I'll go over those as well. And we'll get one plugged in and fired up before I kind of continue on. Well, maybe I'll go through and show some of the other models as well as I get powering them up. And I'll show one of the aspects that you may be noticing with the back of the unit here. All the all the 320, excuse me, the 3125s that I had, they're all the same. I think I have one that has an older version of Windows CE. It's got like Windows CE 4.2, but all the other ones have Windows CE 5, and that CE is Compact Edition. You know, the joke is combining it with the Windows CE with the Windows Millennium and Windows NT, you know, making the cement joke of compiling the acronyms and stuff like that. And Windows CE gets joked upon for that, the sense of how it is, that compact edition that really doesn't have a way to load, easily load apps as a way. You get what you, pretty much what's loaded on the machine. That's why there's so many things on changing and trying to get Linux to run on these machines. Now, I don't have any dot color on this one, but I went through, I had colored dot stickers, and the next model up, the 3150 SE, and this is slightly more powerful, has a gray power button there. Uses the same power supply, and looks almost the same on the back. You have one more USB port, which I didn't address before. These are just USB 2. So you could ultimately put a flash drive, easily connect up a thumb drive onto here. A lot of time when people are loading Linux on these, that's what they're choosing to do, is they have a way to go through and set Linux on the USB drive, being a little bit more portable. Some of the other thin clients, they actually have more of a like an parallel ATA connection inside, so they can actually put a compact flash or a DOM device connected up to the hard drive that basically has that flash RAM that goes through, and they have Linux, or some people go through and they've loaded a version effectively of DOS in ROM that's on these. But I have my 3150s have differ slightly on the terminal emulation and other factors that are on these machines. And I went through and I just have a color scheme of green dots for one level, and I've got this one marked. These Post-it notes have fallen off, but we'll get a chance to kind of go through and to look at that aspect of what I've gone through and marked, basically the a firmware version and the markings, like the 3125. That's got even your certificate of authenticity for the Windows CE level. Okay, so that is right there. That's showing Windows CE 4.2 Pro, and then even effectively has the key code that's there. I want to look at my other 3125 because I thought most of my units are the same. Let's see what this one. Yeah, 4.2 Pro as well. So I'm trying to remember what, maybe one of mine was different, that it had this Windows CE 5 or something like that. You notice the amber button is a little bit faded, different from the other unit I had. Now, I've also got, like I say, these Post-it notes that fall off. This one looks about the same level for all that. The version 1.10, and I have power term marked there. I even got the time frame. It's got effectively the BIOS version that was the 1st of July 2005. This one has the markings on the back, And even, so there's the Windows CE Pro version 5. This has you see the audio connectors there. It's got a headphone and a microphone jack. You know, you can, I've got these connected to KVMs, the simple PS2 VGA KVMs is how I use them. The 3125, along with just the 3 USB ports, this just has that earphone jack. Does not have and I think this is monochrome. It's not marked as anything with color, but doesn't have a microphone jack on there as well. So these are and again, we've got, you know, these zip tie on these cables. Now, I promise I've got these in use. I've gone through and I've got some of these to play, but I mean, I still have these around that have this, these zip ties and things like that. So this is the power supply. So I'd even have to get looked. Sometimes they have such small print. Okay, so this is marked as 2.5 amps at 12 volt DC. But as I was saying, I think I've run like the 1 amp power supplies and things like that on these. Probably at least 2 amp for good measure if you want to be assured that you're running these absolutely correctly. And when these are plugged in, they have a green power indicator with all the lighting. I'll have to show. I mean, that actually is lit in this case. So the other color codes, and I don't think that, you know, the Post-it notes have fallen off these, but I've got a red marking on there, not for any changes externally, but it's just got a different firmware level, possibly even a different terminal emulation, which is the main aspect that I use these for now. And that's the reason I'm taking a few of these to give to June, because these are just nice little compact boxes that I have used to access the AS400s. You know, you have an Ethernet interface on your AS400. These are a nice way to go through and not necessarily have a Windows system of Windows 7 or Windows 10, something like that. Certainly you can use the older Windows XP, Windows Vista, to go through and do what IBM had as client access. And that's basically terminal emulation over the Ethernet connection on the computer, going to the mid-range system, the AS400 in this case. And so these are just effectively smaller computers. You don't even need to have a Windows 7 or Windows 10 or whatever sort of system, that you can just use the thin client with the same relative connections, those older connections, to go through and connect on. I've got, this one has and this one still has I even have it identified as blue, the BIOS version. This is an older BIOS. We saw the 1.10. This is the 1.06. Looks like a slightly older BIOS. And then the TEC is that terminal emulation. And we'll get to these in turn. So I probably want to we'll figure out the blue and the green. I don't really think that these relate in any sort of sequence of red is a lower level or something like that, as we see, and we'll go through and test these. We can get to the the HP units here in a moment, probably after going through and getting on the Wyse models. And so on the Parky Towers, the 3150 SE, this is NSGO GX2, so the next generation up from the 3125, and these are at 400 megahertz. This is relating to being like a Pentium MMX or Pentium 2 level of CPU. Certainly probably not more of a budget processor that was on these. And of course, able to do passive cooling. But sufficient for running the resources of what these systems do. This one has, the 3150s have 32 megabyte of flash and 128 megabyte of RAM. So we see about the capabilities almost doubling for a lot of this. Still, the resolutions are still relatively 4:3 aspect ratios. And that's what I'm saying with a thin client, a lot of time you're not using a widescreen. You're using a 4:3 display to just do some basic video of these. These are, the pretty much more of the square screens than really a widescreen aspect or a 16:9 aspect ratio. I'll go through and I'll put up the link to and people can easily follow this as well of where the Parky Tower site is. Let me get looking at the chat a little bit as well. Okay, yeah, Dell acquired Wyse in 2012. Thank you, Russ. So it's been about a dozen years, for all that. And there's a link for the 3150. Let's go through, and I'll have to change my screen around a little bit. I'll make some adjustments, but I'm going to go through it. I'm going to get the 3125 running here first. And we'll get to the HP units. As it is, I'm kind of going through and scaling up from oldest or less capable to the newer machines, but all about the same vintage for all that. And we had our mouse. I'll get into the aspects of the mouse and keyboard adjustments on these as well. So we have the basic connections there, video, keyboard and mouse. We can go through. Now, a lot of time when these are when you apply power to them, they don't necessarily, just like a computer, they kind of do a little bit of a start sequence, but the LED out here lights this amber for probably 5 seconds, and probably just a means of, that might be a self check or just a way for the machine to figure out that, hey, I've got power. But that LED will eventually go out. I was saying 5 seconds, but maybe more like 10 seconds. So that is gone. That LED's gone out. And I want to actually get it adjusted as I what's on the screen before I go through. And so we'll go to VGA. I have to be able to hit my, okay. So I'm going to initially, let's go through and let's make well, I'll probably have to go through and make adjustments as I get video. So let's go through, power this on. Okay. And this really doesn't show any distortion for being stretched out like this, but it gives the identifiers and the ICA that's a Citrix compatible device as well. I want to go through. I want to see where it's going to. Let's get it 4x3. Okay. Just kind of a loading situation. Okay. So it gives. Come on. Okay, there we got the screen. And like I say, with this, I'll go through and make adjustments. So this is, it's interesting. And these are kind of an auto load. I'll get to the aspect of this, of how what I had these set up for. And you saw the Internet Explorer window come up immediately. So, and we got DNS error because, I did forget one connection that is probably kind of important here. And really probably good that I didn't have that plugged in initially anyway. So get the network connection on the back of this. So let's go through, get things adjusted slightly here. Let's get out of the Internet Explorer. So looking at this, I'm trying to think if there's even a, I was trying to see if there's a way to go through and view the version. These are like, it's like Internet Explorer 5. These machines, for the time frame, as you saw when they were made, the Windows CE at the 4.2 level, the Windows CE 5 really kind of relates to being about the XP level of how the system appears. We will go through. And so what I did is I used these years ago for, I have a terminal set up and even the web page that all you did was power this unit on. That had some ISP modems where we just have a batch. We'd have hundreds of these modems. And you plug this into the modem and it would go through and be able to configure that unit through the web interface that you could just run through a sequence. And I even had it set up for a script that it would throw settings to the modem to be able to configure it for us to go through and issue it to customers. And of course, we'll be working all with that, making adjustments to that later on. Now, I wanted to go through to get into the control panel because we're going to go through for one of the aspects to show you just how the changes that are made. Let's go through. Let's, this is thinking it's back in April of 2000. But these things even go through to where, and there's not any necessarily quicker way to do things than the mouse clicks. I know I'm going through and I'm wasting time ultimately for getting these set to a current date, but I want to show that they're still, they recognize the current date. There's a real-time clock that is on these units. This is hard-coded for the real-time clock. So if I have one that's stored away, of course, it's just like a regular computer, hasn't saved away the configuration, or it's lost the time that's set on the unit. but these are able to handle, you know, effectively a conventional time or contemporary, as a current time. And this is not necessarily real important, although in an environment where you're connecting onto a host, even using like Active Directory, a remote desktop protocol, that these would go through to and we can shift to VM. Okay. And why it'll actually go through, and it actually changes the time when you go through. Let's go through. Yeah, daylight savings time. I think we're all current there. Windows CE, for a lot of it, has the OK button for any dialog box, has it in the upper right-hand corner. A little bit interesting to get used to these. We came up with a good display level. You know, we could even go through to where I think at the lower settings, higher resolution, of course, doesn't have as much color depth for these basic units. Even that's interesting. I've never seen that same before. The base available for the DDC, how it's querying the modder over that digital link to go through and set up. With 640 by 480, you still don't have a high color, don't have a 24-bit setting. 800 by 600 is probably fine for our instance here. Just like Windows, it goes through and does a basic test for what the color patterns and things like that. And yes, it'll go through and actually revert if you don't respond in a quick enough time. This has the same for a screensaver in there for wait 12 minutes. And the screensavers on Windows CE are pretty basic. It just puts Windows CE and changes it around an emblem. And of course, these thin clients, they're from the time frame where of the CRT modders, where a screensaver was still needed to not have that phosphor burn in. You even have the ability to turn off the modder. And the ICA, that's with that Citrix sort of thing, going through and even doing a password protect. If it goes through a screensaver, it would effectively lock the workstation, because this is just like a regular computer connected into the network that you leave your desk, you want to go through and lock your workstation so nobody can come by and change settings on the system. So normally for these, and you see the conventional Windows CE desktop here, that I go through and actually have a preference for these Wyse units to go through and do the other display method, which we'll get looking at in a moment here. And I just want to make sure that there's some other settings, and it'll actually go through and reboot here in a moment after we make some of the changes. Now for the, you have security related, you also have the port lockouts that you can do. You can go through and configure these ports for different addresses. And these are conventional, just like they would be to the to a PC. going through and setting up the baud rates and things like that. This would be helpful on the aspect of your console, using these as a to get on network equipment, things like that, through that console connection. The for the modems level, I think. So we have, you can go through and set a serial modem in this case for it to give certain commands. These typically have a variety of settings of selections you can do. I only saw Hayes compatible there, but you have your remote all the stuff that you can do with these SMTP client, SMMP. You have security aspects you can set on these, whether it's auto login, going through and enabling the security, even going through and adding users. And this is more for the remote desktop protocol of actually connecting on to Windows servers. And again, you have to be very close in the time that server's running at to be able to authenticate correctly. If you have a time mismatch, it will not do that. You have some basic system tools, such as IP, config, your trace route, and ping. You have a volume control, just a little piezo element that's inside there. It goes through. I want to look at keyboard right before we get over to the aspect of the going through and setting up the network and rebooting these. So I want to show, probably I'm good with the regular webcam. As you see, one of the nice things with these Wyse units is that you can go through and you can order a 122 key keyboard from Unicomp, and maybe John can, if he's, I think he's on the chat. I don't remember the pricing for these. It's not, of course, it's as expensive. Here's your model numbers and things like that. But you can go through and get one of these in this case a PS2 connection. That these thin clients go through and recognize a terminal level of having the 122 keys connected up to one of these thin clients. And of course, it's showing up there as the 122 key IBM keyboard. And saying other things like your numlock on boot, you can go through and test the keyboard. If you do change the keyboard, you have to go through and, of course, the PS2 aspect of repowering the unit as well, of powering down, and of course not recommended to change the keyboard while you're powered up at all. You have the mouse stuff, the same kind of adjustments that you would expect from the Windows side. We're going to look at system. I wanted to see if this has picked up an IP address. No, this looks like it's hard-coded. Because I had this set up, goes through and scrolls for all the copyright information. And we have the ability to reset the terminal to a factory default, but give some identification as far as all the Windows CE version, CPU speed, the RAM, and effectively the BIOS version. System information. We still have it's set as a static domain. But we're going to get into the network settings. And for a the built-in Ethernet, and let's go through. Now, I actually have to where these will, we should get IP addresses. It's going to be a DNS from the DHCP process. I'm going to go through and blank those out. I mean, we're not setting the static address in this case. We're going to set this to obtain an IP address automatically. That should get all the other functionality from, effectively from my network in the way that I have it set up. And in particular, yes, now we're not going to reboot this necessarily. We're going to go through and change the desktop first. So here we have the two choices: standard desktop UI with connection manager, or the new desktop with taskbar, start menu, and desktop. And as you can see, it's the one that's selected here is this quote, this new desktop. On these Wyse units, I go through and actually set it as standard desktop. And that actually does require a reboot. Now, it may go through and it may want to launch the Internet Explorer. And we'll touch on the aspect of Internet Explorer here in a moment as well. So we're going to let it reboot in this other connection manager screen. As I say, I normally find that more useful, really, for these Wyse units to go in that connection manager screen versus the HP units. I typically do allow them to go to the Windows CE desktop. And I did go through and select that to check the network on boot. Okay. Yeah, you can order the PS2 version from, it's all specifying those options of how you want the keyboard. But just as I say, these thin clamps are really nice. So you can go through and use that 122 key keyboard. Now these are available on, I see them on eBay and things like that. There's a seller on the vintage computer groups that was going through and had some that he was selling as well. Okay. So at least it doesn't do, it's set to the auto start. So yeah, it's going to go through and kick off, and it's still not going to find a page the way that I have the network set up. I'm going to actually go through and to change these. We can go through. So any of these you can have set to an auto start function. So this could even be to where you set up the terminal emulation like we're going to do, and it would automatically go through and do a process to go right in that screen at startup. But we're going to go through and edit, because I think this is the one that I have the scripting set up. And I've got it marked as the save mode settings as default, just as a basic serial terminal. And it's going to a particular web address. I don't have any real of the advanced settings. But as I say, I think on this one, I even set up a script to where it goes through and it writes. You can see the script that it runs over here, that it goes through, and you can set these to wait for particular text strings, but I would have it plug in and give the enter key. It's waiting on a prompt from the router. So this is actually using an SSH session to the equipment, and it's running a command on the modem to save the the current to default settings. And this is a command like you would see with various network equipment, like the Cisco gear, the older Cisco gear. And then it's exiting. So that was after you went through and programmed the modem and set it up for the customer. And that was dynamic because the customer, the usernames and things like that the customers would use to connect on, of course, being different. But then running this process as a second step, and that would save that configuration to the default, to the flash memory of the unit. So these units are really kind of neat to have. I mean, the automation level that you can set up. Decades ago, my dad would do office supply ordering online, and he actually would connect on, and it was a place out of Phoenix. I think they even ran effectively a mainframe level of system, and you would dial in with a modem and go through to use the system as a terminal. And in fact, I think the first at first they actually sent a terminal, an async terminal, to my dad instead of this is a time frame when you're talking about the 286 level, 386 level, 486 was just coming out, early 90s. So my dad on a keyboard, he would go through it. It was always kind of like me, a little bit of hunt and peck and things like that, of going through and look into the keyboard, looking at what was on the screen. So I went through and I replaced that terminal with actually at that time it was a 486 DX 133, probably even a little bit of overkill for a computer system, a PC that had Procom Plus. And that would go through and run some scripts to where I had that to keys, and I had a little cheat sheet for my dad to say, okay, at this point you press the F2 key and that gets you logged onto the system. And in the appropriate spot, when you're all finished with your ordering, press this particular function key and that'll get you off the system. And so I automated it as much as possible to help out my dad for that instance. But you can set these things up for scripting with these to where it goes through and follows through a sequence. And it's a standard where you move the things between the blocks here to remove or to remove all. And just all the other settings that you can have for that terminal session. So I actually had it set to a shutdown. So as soon as you ran this process, it would go through and prompt you, hey, do you want to shut down? Because that was the last step. So it goes through to shut down. And then the next sequence is you unplug that modem and get that ready for the customer and plug in the next modem. And there was time frames in the evening that I used to run through and have just an assembly line level to where I'd work my way through the modems and mark them with the post-it notes of, okay, this modem is for so-and-so, for the techs to take those out on site the next day. And so that's the end of the routine. I'm not going to go through and change that routine at all. We unmarked that this initial Internet Explorer. Now, this Internet Explorer, that's useful from the aspect of just like the console port to get on some network equipment, you have the older web interface for a lot of older equipment, network equipment. And that has basic web style interface, not even HTTPS, not even a modern context of a secure interface to it, but a basic web interface. And that goes through and does some really nice things too. That's why I really like these thin clients, are going through and setting up that Internet Explorer. And you can go through and create basically different entries. And we may see that with the other thin clients I have here, of going through and being able to access that web interface at the appropriate level that you can't even do on a modern system, of accessing that web interface for the equipment that you can do very well on these thin clients now. I'm going to go through, I'm going to add And we can look at the choices that we have. So you have your Citrix ICA client, your dial-up client, Internet Explorer, Microsoft Remote Desktop Client, PPP over Ethernet. And so the PPPoE authentication is something that is also kind of a neat side effect in the background. A lot of time I had modems that were bridged, and I would even have the thin client would supply the authentication credentials to the other end to get that equipment basically online. And that's what all that the thin client would do was actually, it was connected into an Ethernet switch and would do the login process so that whole range of equipment could go through and get connected. Even some of the other stuff, I mean, you can set up even, I have the pfSense firewall that you can set up with PPPoE clients to go through and authenticate over a network before they're basically allowed to do stuff. So there's lots of abilities. We have the, I need to check out this VPN aspect sometime. It has where it's the PPTP client of the VPN. But in this case, we're going to go through to the terminal emulation level. Okay. And the connection name, we're just going to simply call this as home host. The emulation, for all the choices here, I'll go through them kind of slow there, just to kind of show. You have even an AIX terminal. All these different levels. And in this case, we're going to choose the IBM 5250 emulation. But you do have the 3270 emulation there, and you also have the 3151 async terminal. Probably for the basics of how this is set, let's go through and let's choose a 3180 Mul2. What the heck? And you have other choices there as far as whether you want it as a monochrome, your left, and so left control key acts as reset. Let's go through and let's set that in this context. And for the other two options, the right control acts as enter key or carriage return acts as enter key, you need to have one of the two at least set up, or you're going to find yourself in a place where it's just going to say that it doesn't want to do anything that's understanding as a enter. And this is kind of in the notion of a terminal keyboard, to where normally you're effectively your enter key is down here in this position down here, not up on as a PC. And of course, people used to the PC side of things typically will set that the carriage return acts as enter key. This is typically for a 101 key keyboard that I would recommend that you go through and do the carriage return acts as enter key. This doesn't do any newer. Well, I guess it does actually. This has the 30. Just to kind of show some of the selections. 3487, I think, is about effectively the newest type of terminal that is listed there. And these are just very minor for the things that they can of the terminal emulation that they do. So we can do a connection type over TCP/IP, over that Ethernet connection, over a modem, or just a direct serial connection. And even has for the configuration name and things like that if you're doing it from a modem. And you can also do a host rollover to where it goes through and it would load. If it's not able to connect up to the first host you specify, it's able to connect up to an alternate from there. We'll go through and even can do some terminal emulation over these modem and serial connections later on. I'll run through some of the tests. Now, even not to effectively dox myself, I do have this set up. I do have a DNS entry set up on my network. Since I am remote from my AS400 location, I can actually just plug in this for my host name, and it's able to resolve that through DNS rather than plugging in my public site IP address. Okay, here's your scripting utility. You can have going through to even get you into. There's typically some options even later on with the higher level terminal emulation that you can have. You can pick a menu or a particular area on your host that you're getting into when you're accessing it. This is the printer setup, and a lot of time, just like the IBM terminals, you can have a local printer connected to these thin clients that basically is identified to the host even. So your print job is going through right there to what you have set up. And here's some things on the terminal client that we'll see in a moment here, the status bar and the clipboard aspects of what it does on closing the host connection and how your cursor style is set up. Here's your auxiliary port. And that's probably a lot of the time of the having the printer identified to the host is what I would think that has. So we have our home host set up, and as I say, we could even go through and have this set up as a startup sequence to automatically start when we power on the thin client. But let's go through and connect and find out if all my DNS settings are otherwise correct. And maybe it might take its time. Okay, yeah. So all the DNS resolution I've got does work. I can go through and get onto my host. And so, again, these are, this is over Telnet. This is over port 23. It's not encrypted in any level. So someone that is along that pathway, and I have the connection at both ends in this case, but of course that crosses some network equipment to go through the internet to do this as well. So you want to take those into to understand that this is unencrypted traffic for this level, the Telnet client effectively using that. That's telling my last login being last night, a little bit after 9 o'clock. And we have our terminal listing. I want to look at the system messages right now. So it's 3.3 messages not needing to reply, just to make sure that my how the AS400 is running. I have normal system messages there of the cleanup being completed, just the scheduled items that the system does. And going through, of course, when it's giving you the more indication down here in the lower right-hand corner, that the page down, page up, that's very simple from the aspect of a PC keyboard. So we're paging back through older messages and just seeing some of the stuff that it's done as the schedule. If we wanted to look at some of these, we have the for the level that I'm on, I could be at a higher level. I could even be at the QSEC operator level, to where I could go through and remove all the messages that didn't need a reply by pressing particular keys, or delete particular messages. For the level of count that I'm on right now, I just have the ability to display more details, to where I can go through and do a 5 and giving me more information about what that message entails. But it looks like for the last little bit, we're looking back, and let's see how far back it goes. Okay, so that's gone back, and 4 days in this case, for the last message that's there. So it does log, keeps that running log of things as it goes through. F12 to get back, to exit back one level and get us to the main menu, and we can go through and sign off. Now this is I want to look at the settings. And so you have the ability to go through and set up, excuse me, I got my nose running a little bit today. I'll probably even should get some. Okay. But you can go through and you can set up on these thin clients, just like you could with the later terminals, color changes. Here's your attributes of your foreground colors, background colors, and really get to the point of personalizing these, the terminal session. And the other terminals that we're going to show, wow, time is progressing. That's fine. For having technical difficulties, we started late, but to go through and I don't want to run too long as well. You have macros that you can set up. And keep in mind, this is effectively the lowest level of these thin clients that I've demonstrated so far. Soft buttons, and basically your soft buttons mean what's up on the down here at this level, the bottom of the screen, and mouse button actions of what those do. For a right click, even set up to the copy and paste, or in combination with particular keys to do particular things. And you have a clipboard effectively too. Okay. Oh, whether it's text or graphics. You can select all and clear buffers and things like that. But here, having the ability to go through the printer stuff, saving a session, closing a session, setting it back to a factory default level again, but we're going to go through and exit. It prompts us with a reminder whether we're sure. Now, this is the, I wanted to look at the version a little bit. It's good it displays this because this is the Team Talk terminal emulation. On the other, some of the other stuff, we'll see the power term being a alternate terminal emulation app that is on the Windows CE platform. And in fact, I'll go through, I can probably demonstrate one of the mid-level 3150 SEs. As I say on these Wyse units, I like to go through and to have this connection manager show rather than the standard Windows CE desktop. And yeah, we go through a lot of problems. So are you sure? You do have the ability to go through and restart the system and things like that. Let's quickly get shifted over. Let's do one of the just a mid-level of the red. Okay, that's got the TEC. I wanted one with the power term just to kind of show and I'm even trying to think on, I don't think it's at the 3125 level, but there is a keyboard mapping. Let's see if it's on this one. And again, as I plug the unit in, it briefly runs that LED up front. Okay, let's get this one powered on. This gives a little bit more presentation of what you'd expect for a BIOS screen on startup. But the same splash screen level. Hopefully everybody's having a good time and okay. I was just wanting to see some of the other information. Okay. Attempting to auto configure. Okay, so this may be effectively a factory cleared unit, or factory reset. And again, I have, let's go through. We'll look at control panel to get, and then get back to, so this is the control panel access from the connection manager screen. And I wanted to look at, and it's basically under the, under the terminal emulation, you have the ability to work with the 122 key keyboard and things like that. We may see that with, and the way it works here is that if once you close out of control panel, it'll go back to that connection manager screen. Okay. So this should pick up a DHCP address, should have. And again, we could do the tools like a ping. So here you even have, you know, the options on a ping to go through and set all the things just like you would from a command line. on PC. It's even a graphical interface to your ping, wholly different from what you see in the commercial levels of Windows. But you have like the -T where it pings until it's stopped. And you can set a variety of other options to this. Okay. I wanted to make sure with that initial message, whether it was giving us okay, it is giving us oh, okay. Here I am. I'm not pinging the right host for this location. The way that I have my network set up, I'm going through and I'm thinking of home, my network setup at home, and I'm not remembering to adjust when I'm in the studio here. But there I have the I get a response when I actually have the right address in there. So once we close out of control panel, it goes back to that connection manager. Just to kind of show some of the very granular options you can go through and set up on here to DHCP options and things like that. But the same basic settings is up on that 3125 unit. And the system, you know, here's your Windows CE level 5. And the CPU speed 400 megahertz. And actually, you know, that should be 128 megabyte of RAM, but there's probably that 3 megabyte maybe using it for some features. But there's the network interface information. Very graphical sorts of responses, different from mainstream Windows. The other, what was the other option I was thinking of? I wanted to look at. Oh, I was wanting to look at display. Now the date time, and again, not really important that we set this to the current time. Some of the later units, they have the ability to do, and I thought the 3125s had the ability to do the network time, although you have to set it close. So here's where your time control, and you could actually set this to a time server. So, and I'd have to even see what ones of these are even still in, I would think some of these would still be in operation. Let's go through, let's see if we have the ability. Okay, so that apparently is online. It gave us a synchronization message. So that's a quick way to go through at this level. I could have done this on the 3125 as well, to set this to a more appropriate, if I'd had the time zone set correctly. And we're in daylight savings time, but still went through to get this set up very quickly for the appropriate time. Well, and again, not really critical on how we go through and set set the authentic time on this unit. But that's one way to do it for the if it has that ability to do the network time, that SNTP, I believe. Okay. So let's go through. So there's your standard remote desktop stuff that you can do. And that's also kind of neat. I've set that up in the past where going through and remoting into Windows Server 2003, 2008, 2012. I'm trying to think if this has the... I'm looking through for the power term level. And we may have to get into the HP just to have that guarantee, because I don't, with the marking slipping from this, not the same level of terminals that it supports. Let's go through and set this up about the same. Okay. I go through and I have to look at the keyboard a lot of the time too. Am I typing? Yeah, this is pretty much the same setup. I don't think this is the power term level on this one. And then this gives you a summary screen at the end of the setup. You're about to create a new session and what the parameters of that are. Really kind of a cool thing, you know, if you think about it. So, and Pine Lightning, thank you. I'm glad you like the videos for the level, the production level I do, and just the live streams I have right now. So this is still the TEC client, and I don't think, no, the power term goes through and it has an interesting keyboard mapping thing that we might be able to see, might be able to show. Let's go through and let's quickly get connected to this one, and then switch over to yet another one. I want to get the kind of the same thing on the login. We see that and showing the login that we just did from the other thin client, the 3125. We have different languages that we can use here to have it set for. But pretty much all the same menu choices within this, since it's the same terminal emulation. Okay, so let's sign off before we end the session. Okay. Let me just briefly try one of the other ones, and I even think I have one of the other ones set up. more fully than what this one was. And the nice thing, setting these to network time, then effectively the next time it powers up, it's going to go through and be set to the appropriate time. There's not really even any, I don't think that these have a battery in them. We're going to try one of the blue dot ones, just because I think that that may have power term. And I'll try and get moved on to the HP. Okay. And while it's giving that amber light on the front, you can't. That's all it wants to do is give me the amber light. Maybe this one's broken. It's just giving me the amber light when I go through to the. And I thought I've used this one rather recently. If I've got, there we go. Finally got a. Not getting anything. On the screen though. It lit up. Wow, it just took a while. You really can't interrupt that when you first plug it in, it gives you the amber indicator. You really can't mess with it and power up or anything else. It just seems like it's got to figure out some stuff at the start. Okay. So here we see that default. I want to see just briefly to run through, because I thought some of these units had power term. Emulation. No, this is the same setup. Maybe we'll just have to look at the power term. So I looked through, did red, blue. Let's look at the green one just briefly before I get into these. Again, these dots are just various levels of the firmware on these thin clients and just slightly variations. One of the big changes being that the power term, yeah, this is the green dot is actually labeled as power term. It has a label on there that's listed as power term. So we'll know that we have it with this one. And that just being a different terminal emulation than the TEC or the Team Talk. And that gave me the same indicators at startup, but we'll have to see. This is still marked as 1.10. with the power term label. Okay, so this is, and this is one of the ones I've been using at home, it looks like. So it's already set up for some various things there. And as I say, even connecting onto different equipment that I have over the serial cable or as HTTP interface. I want to edit. Okay, yeah. So this is the power term setup, and you can specify device name. This is going through to where we're saying it as 5250 display, and there's even for the terminal setup. You have all the adjustments in here, just basically the same as the Team Talk, but just a different way of doing things. And I'm trying to think for the keyboard. There's your color setups, preferences. I was trying to think where the keyboard mapping area was on these. I can't remember. Maybe I'm thinking about on the because I don't think the HP units are able to be set up using the 122 keyboards the same way. Okay, so let's briefly connect with this one. And there you have the power term splash screen. And as you see, the soft buttons and all the other stuff going through. But that's the power term information. Oh, there's the keyboard map. So this is showing, this is kind of the cool thing too. With the power term is it shows at the top, and if you have a 122 keyboard connected to this unit, it would actually show this they would be duplicated top and bottom. But at the top, you have the 5250 keyboard, how the keys are mapped compared to your PC keyboard that's local to you, that's shown on the bottom here. Just all how the keys are, and you can go through and you can do a selection for some of the things that it shows. It would show you for what the what that function does. Reverse screen. So really kind of a handy thing as a way to go through and set up the functionality on this. But you can see too of what a effectively a 122 keyboard could do for you by having it connected in there. That so-called host connect keyboard. So just one of the kind of cool things to that. And as you go through on the mappings, you can even trash basically or set back to the defaults the changes as you do for the mapping. And it has, again, the selection for, well, I guess it just has for English set here. And that's probably tied to the selection of the keyboard in the control panel. I don't really think that there's a need to go through and connect on to my host again, but here's some of the choices of the menuing. With the power term, you have the so-called power pad, and that's a graphical interface that you have that basically of soft keys that you could send to the host. You can program it, and it's just a separate window that's dockable and on portions of the screen as a way to send particular commands to the host. Kind of interesting for all that. And these do have ultimately the ability to set more than one host session to run at the same time. Now, for the square screen, it gets to the point, and this is what you'll see a lot with the Windows CE, is that you just have the X. You don't have the ability to minimize or to maximize. The screen is going to show up full screen no matter what. And that's even typical for some of the tools like the ping and stuff like that, is that they would go through and it thinks I've changed it with some of the stuff, but it prompts you, just like Windows, to save your changes. To where I'm trying to think of the train of thought that I had for that. But yeah, the soft keys, that's kind of an interesting setup for all that. Let's go through. We've been running active a very long time. Well, it's an hour and 40 minutes, maybe. But I wanted to get in a little bit to the, let's get back to, as a final thing. And I had plans to go through as I did these. I'll go through at a later level and test them. But here is now probably can leave the screen like this, just offset a little bit, kind of work with it from there, to where this is the HP 5520, T5520. And it's got a little stand, these little T screws, and these are even marked as HP on them. Kind of interesting for all that. There's the ports on the back, and we have 4 USB still, and there's a USB 2, the standard Ethernet 10/100, and you have what's marked there is the keyboard, although that can be keyboard or mouse on the PS2 connection, and you have the other one on USB. I'm trying to remember if the splitters work on these things too, the mouse and keyboard splitters. You have only a single serial port, and then the VGA connection power, and same sort of thing. The HP does actually have its own 12-volt supply. Let's see what this one is rated at. Okay, and this is bundled off. I'm just dropping everything here. This is, has the tie with the tie wrap here. So this has maybe not even been opened. I don't know if I've, with the even ends there, I've probably not reapplied that. But there's the HP supply. And for I was trying to see the amperage, the voltage and amperage. Okay, so that's saying 3.3 DC 12 volts and the 3.3 amp. So a little bit higher amperage than what I was thinking. Now these have the standard C13 connector. The Wyse units, they have what you see on a laptop connection a lot of time. They have the the little triple or the reduced sized. That's the power supply for the Wyse. So let's get that plugged in. They have a green LED, really hard to see under the lights here, in the corner that's very dimly lit to show that it's effectively working. It's basically a troubleshooting aspect. I wanted to get out this other. Okay. So just like the Wyse, I have these, I've got them marked with the dots, green and red. And there's some ultimate difference in firmware levels between these that I'll have to go through and check out to see. Now for the, and it's got headphone and microphone. The, as I was saying, for the mouse, you know, I've got a few of these. Here's an HP mouse, for instance. And nice thing is this takes it to being an optical mouse. No more ball to clean. This is the PS2 connector. And of course, you'll see there's less of these around. You'll find them. I really like these for the situations I use them. But of course, on the HP unit here, and this is the more common, you know, optical mouse with the USB connection that we can use here. And so to get this started up, okay. And just as a comparable nature, and I'll go through and I'll put up the, so let's take this down. Let's take that down. Okay. So HP keyboards, these are the keyboards that would come with. This one actually does look like it's got some ultimately a paper punch or something else. A little dirty. But this is the one with the PS2 connector. And then you have the malls that are the same with the USB. And in this case, we'll go through and we'll use the PS2 connection. I'll get the Parky Towers link up. Okay, so we get, as we've been through these ones, we can get these put down. I'm going to move the HP unit closer over here. We'll get the VGA. The network connection. And lastly, power. Okay. Right in the middle. Let me get the Parky Towers link up for these. And Parky Towers, of course, covers many, many more of the thin client possibilities that are out there that I do not have. So HP, this is the 5220. I should show. Okay, and I still have, okay, let's get, I can probably leave that up for the moment. And so this is the marking on the back. August of 2006. Okay. And the Parky Towers link would be this. Okay. So this has, and again, this shows a view of the inside. And yeah, it's probably still fine. Once I want to get quickly to kind of going through and getting this up on the screen as well. But shows interior view. This is a 800 megahertz. It's just about doubling again, and the flash being 64 megabytes, RAM 128 megabyte fixed. So that probably means soldered in. And this is actually capable of doing 1600 by 1200 32-bit color. So it actually even could connect onto this 4:3 aspect ratio screen that I have back behind here just fine. And this even on the Parky Towers probably shows this for the Wyse clients as well, but the wattage when it's running of 12 watts off and 18 to 24 watts while it's running. Okay. And even gives the showing the CPU ID and some of the expansion that levels that people have gone through and checked on this. So let's go through and get just to quickly kind of show the differences. To this one. I even have one of these in my office that I use for connecting on to the hosts that we have at work still running. So there you kind of conventional sort of splash screen that you see. Okay, so default's loaded. I think these actually have a, try to remember if these have a battery to them. Don't remember. I'm not seeing it on the interior view. Okay, so F1 to, so let's even look at the setup of these. There's something different from the Wyse units. And very conventional screen that you'd expect on like a vintage system. Okay, you can even put an asset tag in there. CMOS features. Okay. BIOS features. And you could even have the setup to boot from USB and things like that. That's where where the Linux side of things come into to play here. It'd be interesting to play with booting these things over the network later on too. Your integrated peripherals. And showing the keyboard attached to the PS2 connection, of course, the way that we have it. Power management. And you can even set these to wake up basically at a certain time for particular days of the week. Okay. And some of these units, I don't know if I've even had them out for any length of time or worked with them before. So I picked them up, but happy to bring them and pass them along so others, so June can go through and use one of these with the things that she's trying to do. Okay. And there's our, and these I actually prefer to go through and set up to show the standard Windows CE desktop. And you can actually add icons in on the desktop. It actually has a, what they call the thin connect, excuse me, or the, yeah, the thin connect you can set up with sessions in there. So here's the choices with it. And these have, I think it's all the power term. Well, let me see. No, TE. Okay, so that's maybe the difference in the dots. Is this one is the TE and the other one is the power term. Red dot is the team talk. And the green one that I have here, this would be power term, I believe, on this one. And we saw the difference between team talk and power term otherwise. But so the setup here for the terminal emulation would be very similar. Very much the similar selection of what terminals you could have. And I'll even do something fancy. And again, you know, you want to have one of the bottom two selected as your enter key. Okay, TCP to our home host. And the same thing here, I need to set up the network time source. So there's your, there's a few differences for the auto login, but this basically the same functionality. And give you the summary screen at the end of things. So here is the control panel. HP being slightly different. And really the system updates. Let's go through and synchronize with. Okay. Automatically synchronize. That's how much boot. I'm synchronized successfully. And probably not set to all the correct time zone and everything like that again, but that's fine. Okay. So there are some separate things from the Wyse in the control panel. Again, I don't think the HPs can do the 122 key keyboards the way that they're normally configured. Some of the HP stuff is a little bit newer in the regards of how it for the entries or can a little bit more modern setups in some cases, or can identify things a little bit differently. But there's your copyrights and things like that. And again, you know, once you close out control panel, it takes you back to, and of course, in this case, we have this HP Thin Connect screen, and it goes through and it puts, you know, icons, whatever you have set up in that Thin Connect, to where we have that home host now, that icon. Okay. Same functionality as the Team Talk for the other unit that we have, the Wyse units. There's your Team Talk. You have the build level and the version. As I say, this green dot HP unit, it's also a 5520. I'm expecting this to have the power term on it. And I had, like I say, I had these marked and had the post-it labels that have fell off. But that's a quick view of the HP side of things as well. And okay. And the HP site is long down, but we can go through and pull up pages. By that, you know, this can be set up to a particular home page and everything else at launch, just like standard internet stuff, a home page. And it's actually set up in the, I want to go through. I've gone through and I've signed the guest book before, you know, in instances like this. You know, this is actually showing that, man, we're live on the internet effectively. And Windows CE. Okay. So there I've signed. There's all sorts of other sign-ins to the guest book right now. People with these older systems. Now the here's where you set the options for the Internet Explorer. there's in that thin client or thin connect, excuse me, if you add an Internet Explorer session, there's all the addresses that you can set for your start page and your search page and things like that, what you title it as. So and we can be nice and add all the okay. So there's our start page. Alta Vista. I don't know when they went off the internet, and you can set it up in a kiosk mode as well. But there we have for our Internet Explorer session. If we go to a search, I'm trying to think what this is. The home, the search. See if Google will even load for that level. But there's a quick view, and I didn't run I didn't go through the power term on the HP, but it's going to be very similar to what it is on the Wyse units, the power term. So hopefully that was a good overview of things, of some of the units I'll bring in and have. So yeah, you know that website, Jesse. Let me. Okay, so we're going to go through. Let's get back over and adjust the screen too. No. That's better. Okay. And whew. But yeah, good long stream going over some of these units and just getting ready for going to VCF Southwest this year. Just several days away, less than a week away is when I start the trip to go over there. And I'll be over there starting from Friday morning, and we'll be there on Saturday and Sunday as well. So hopefully everybody enjoyed the stream. Thank you for tuning in. But I've got to go through and get on with my day. I've got other things scheduled, and especially got to get some get some lunch into me. So this is all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you. Yeah, I hopefully can take some footage at VCF Southwest. I'll have to see. I'm not so used. I'm not like Retrotech Chris, where I have my phone and commonly try to record video that way. But we'll see. Goodbye, everybody.